The rain came down in endless sheets, a gray curtain that swallowed the lonely countryside road. Jacob Harris tightened his grip on the steering wheel of his old sedan, the wipers struggling against the storm. He cursed under his breath. The GPS had already lost signal, and the last gas station was miles behind him. But the road sign he'd passed 10 minutes earlier had promised a shortcut to the small town of Blackwood. Now all he could see was the crooked line of trees, their branches reaching over the narrow road like skeletal arms. His headlights cut through the rain just enough to reveal a massive silhouette rising ahead, a sprawling building, its dark windows glinting like hollow eyes. A rusted iron gate half open welcomed him. Above it, he could just make out a name, carved deep into the stone arch. Blackwood Manor. The car sputtered and coughed, then died right at the gates. Jacob swore, perfect timing. He stepped out into the rain, his shoes sinking into the mud, and hurried towards the looming manor. The air was thick with the smell of wet earth and something else, something metallic like rust or blood. The heavy wooden doors groaned as he pushed them open. Inside, the silence was so absolute it roared in his ears. His footsteps echoed through the vast foyer, lined with dusty portraits whose painted eyes seemed to follow him. "Hello?" he called out. His voice was swallowed by the darkness. Lightning flashed outside, illuminating a grand staircase that spiraled into the shadows above. And then, just as the thunder cracked, Jacob swore he heard it, a whisper. It was faint, almost like the hiss of the storm through broken glass, but it came from inside the manor. "Leave." Jacob froze. "Who's there?" he demanded, his heart hammering. But the only answer was the creak of the old chandelier swaying slightly above him. The first room he entered was a parlor, its furniture draped in white sheets. A fireplace sat cold and blackened at the far wall. On the mantel stood a mirror, cracked straight down the middle. For a split second, Jacob thought he saw movement in it. Not his reflection, but something behind him. He spun around. Nothing. Just the empty room. "Calm down," he muttered, though his voice trembled. "It's just a storm, just an old house." He moved deeper into the manor, room after room, the whispers always just at the edge of hearing. Sometimes they sounded like warnings, other times like mocking laughter. And then he found the library. The shelves rose all the way to the ceiling, lined with books whose spines were cracked with age. A single lamp flickered on the desk, though Jacob swore the house had no power. The open book on the desk was soaked in ink, the words smeared into illegible shapes. But one line stood out, written over and over again in jagged handwriting. It watches, it waits, it whispers. A cold wind brushed past him, though the windows were shut. The whisper came again, louder this time, curling around his ear. "Jacob!" He stumbled back, knocking over a chair. His blood ran cold. Whoever it was, they knew his name. He turned to run, but the library door slammed shut on its own. The whispers turned into a chorus now. Dozens of voices speaking in unison, layered, overlapping. "Stay with us. Forever." Jacob clawed at the door handle, but it refused to turn. Behind him, the cracked mirror above the fireplace flickered to life, its surface rippling like water. Slowly, a hand pressed against the glass from the other side. And then another and another, dozens of pale, skeletal hands pushing, clawing, trying to force their way through. Jacob screamed as the glass began to crack. The glass of the mirror shattered with a deafening crack, spraying the library floor with glittering shards. Jacob shielded his face, stumbling backward. When he dared to look again, the surface of the mirror was no longer solid. It was liquid, black and rippling, like the surface of a pond in midnight. Hands kept pushing through, but now faces emerged too. Hollow-eyed, gaunt, mouths opening and closing in silent screams. Their features twisted, melting as though they were trapped between two realities. Jacob bolted toward the other side of the library, clawing at the windows. The glass was cold as stone, refusing to break even when he hurled a chair at it. The whispers grew louder, echoing inside his skull until he thought his head might split open. "Jacob, stay. Join us." "No," he screamed. "Leave me alone." And then, from the corner of his eye, he saw her. A woman stood at the far end of the library, half hidden in shadow. Her dress was old-fashioned, torn at the hem, soaked dark as though with blood. Her face was pale, her eyes dark pits that glowed faintly with an unnatural light. Who are you?" Jacob demanded, his voice cracking. She tilted her head, smiling faintly. "I was the first," she whispered. "And now you will be the last." The floorboards groaned beneath him. Jacob realized too late that the rug under his feet was not a rug at all. It was a massive symbol, carved into the wood itself. A circle of runes, each glowing faintly in the storm's light. His blood chilled as he recognized it, a summoning seal. The woman's voice turned sharp, layered with the chorus of whispers. The house needs a soul. You came willingly, you are chosen. The library shook violently, books tumbling from the shelves as though the very walls were alive. The mirror burst fully open, a portal spilling darkness into the room. The skeletal hands clawed at the floor, dragging themselves into this world. Jacob stumbled backward, falling to his knees. No, I won't, I'm not staying! The woman's smile widened into something inhuman, her jaw stretching far too wide. You already are. In desperation, Jacob fumbled into his pocket. He still had the lighter he'd used at the gas station earlier. With trembling hands, he flicked it on. The tiny flame quivered against the storm of shadows. He grabbed a curtain, yanked it down, and touched the flame to its edge. It caught instantly, fire roaring to life as though the house had been waiting for it. The whispers turned to shrieks of rage. The mirror screamed like a living creature, its surface boiling. The woman let out a piercing wail, her form dissolving into black smoke. The fire spread fast, hungrily devouring the ancient shelves and books. Jacob threw his shoulder against the door one last time. It burst open, sending him sprawling into the hall. Flames chased him as he ran down the grand staircase, coughing, choking on the thick smoke. The portraits on the walls seemed to twist, their painted mouths open in silent cries. The chandelier crashed to the floor behind him, shattering into sparks. He burst out the front doors into the rain, collapsing on the muddy ground. The storm poured down, but behind him Blackwood Manor blazed like a beacon of hell, its windows glowing red with fire. The whispers echoed even through the roar of the flames. Jacob, Jacob. He staggered to his car, praying it might start. Miraculously, the engine coughed to life. He slammed it into gear and sped down the road, never once looking in the rearview mirror. Days later, firefighters and police investigated the ruins of Blackwood Manor. They found no trace of Jacob's car, no footprints, no sign of anyone having been there. But in the ashes of the library, one thing remained intact: the cracked mirror. And when the investigators looked into it just for a moment, they swore they saw a man's face staring back at them, wide-eyed, screaming silently, pounding from the other side. Jacob Harris had never left the house. The end.